You can never outrun someone who's being fueled by passion. Never. The person with passion can live it all day long. They can sleep it all night long. They can get up in the morning and do it, but they're so passionate because they built it and they own it.
Hello and welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, where each week we talk about ideas for raising kids who become thriving adults. I'm your host, Audrey Monkey. I'm a summer camp director, writer, and speaker, and I've had the privilege of working with thousands of children, teenagers, young adult counselors, and parents over the past 3 decades. My husband, Steve, and I are raising 5 kids who currently range in age from 15 to 25. So my interest in raising kind, optimistic, self-reliant kids who become thriving adults is personal as well as professional. Back in April, when my friend Sara Kuljis and I spoke at the Pegasus School for episode 85, I first learned about Richard Watts, who had spoken at the school earlier in the year. Richard is the founder and president of Family Business Office, a legal and consulting firm in Orange County, California. He's the author of 2 books, Fables of Fortune, What Rich People Have That You Don't Want, and Entitlemania, How Not to Spoil Your Kids and What to Do If You Have. Richard speaks internationally on the effects of wealth on parenting and the American family. In this episode of the podcast, episode 101, I'm chatting with Richard about his book, Entitlemania. We talk about a few of the topics that he covers in the book, including why he does not recommend passing along family businesses to the next generation, as well as important ideas for parents to think about as they do estate planning and decide how much money they are going to leave to their children and at what age. As we discuss in this episode, the giving too much for our kids might be more of an issue for wealthy families, but the shielding our kids from struggle is an issue that many parents struggle with. So I hope you'll enjoy this episode and my conversation with Richard Watts, author of Entitlemania. Well, I'm happy to have on the Sunshine Parenting Podcast today, Richard Watts, author of Entitlemania, How Not to Spoil Your Kids and What to Do If You Have. Welcome, Richard.
Hi, Audrey. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm great, and I'm so happy to chat with you today. I just finished reading your book yesterday, so it's all fresh in my mind, and you have some really good info in there. Why don't you start by just telling listeners a little bit about your background, what you do, and then we'll get around to how you ended up writing this book.
Yeah, so my training has been in the legal world. I went to law school 37 years ago, started practicing law, and in that practice, I also went to business school. But in that practice, I began to deal with very wealthy families, and ultimately, those families wanted me to manage their families and take care of issues more than just going to court Monday through Friday and litigating for them. And so about 35 years ago, I converted the practice to where I started representing extremely wealthy families, have grown that for my entire career, and now we're kind of the preeminent firm in the country for managing what we call family offices, which is when people get so much money that they really need somebody to monitor where everything is at any given at one time, because they really can't keep a vision of all of it, and they need a staff. And that's what we do. And so we manage those families, and that's an everyday issue, and gives us a window into seeing what wealth causes, what the problems of wealth. And as you'll see in Entitlemania, sometimes not even wealth, some of the problems that are caused.
Sure. So I think that gets to my next question, which is now you've worked with all these families. So what's the biggest problem that you saw when you were working with these successful families and that prompted you to write this book?
Yeah, as regards the wealth issue, there's a number. My first book was Fables of Fortune, What Rich People Have That You Don't Want. And it really addressed all of those issues. And I would say probably the most troubling of those issues when you get very wealthy is you begin to get very isolated. I don't think most people recognize that, but everybody begins to want something from you. And over a period of time, you begin to become suspicious of the people that are around you. You ultimately find out that everybody really has an ulterior motive of getting to you. And after a while, you don't trust that. And probably equally as troublesome is the issue of entitlement, where these families that have extreme wealth begin to insulate their children from failure and begin to buy their way out of problems by putting them in private schools with tutors and everything you can imagine to make life easier for them, not recognizing that without giving them the opportunity to fail, they're not really giving their kids the long-term staying power in this lifetime of being able to manage themselves and, more importantly, find their own passion. And so I would say those are two real big issues for the difficulties that come with wealth.
Yeah, absolutely. And you make a really good case in your book that this is not just a problem just for super wealthy people. You tell the story of the donut shop owners who, have worked themselves so hard to kind of give everything to their kids and then find out that it actually didn't turn out how they thought it would.
Yes. And Entitlemania was really written initially for me to address the issue of wealth and the causes of entitlement and wealth. And what became very obvious very quickly to me is that the entitlement issue, which brings on two different components, one, giving too much, and two, taking away the struggle. That's the whole thing right there. That giving too much is oftentimes an affliction of the wealthy, but taking away the struggle is a problem with everybody. For whatever reason, we've reached a generation of parents that really do believe that it's better to take away the problems of their kids, hold them in nice and close, and make sure that they don't hurt ever. And that is really pervasive at all income levels.
Yes. And it's not just about money. It's interesting. I had an article this week that was about parents who send their kids to camp, but then will say to us when they get a homesick letter, I just can't stand that my child is suffering at all or uncomfortable. And it's that same idea that parents kind of falsely think that their job is to insulate their child from every tiny discomfort, but that really cripples them for their future if you can't let your kid do some of these things.
Yeah, I like to use the example sometimes of a palm tree. That a palm tree we see in these pictures in hurricanes on islands, that they, big winds come and they tear everything out on the island, but these beautiful 100-foot palm trees, which lean almost horizontal, seem to rebound and have the strength to withstand the storm. And very similarly, what we don't realize is that palm trees, in that process of growing, what's actually happening in the wind is they're actually cracking and they're breaking. And when the skin breaks, they scar. And when they scar, they become stronger. And as they get older and older, they get to a point where they have so much scarring that they're able to withstand almost any storm. And what we do with our kids is it's like taking a palm tree indoors. And we want to grow them and nurture them in a greenhouse, and we want to let them grow taller and taller and taller. But we don't want the scarring. We don't want the cracking. We don't want them to be subjected to the forces of the winds that are blowing in life for our kids. And then at 18 or 20 years old, we take this fully mature palm tree, which we now call an adult child, and we push them out into the wind and expect them to deal with storms. And if you do that to a real palm tree, you can grow it to 100-foot indoors. You take it out, it'll snap right off at the trunk with the very first moderate wind that comes along.
I absolutely love that metaphor. And it was so powerful that is what, when I was at Pegasus, that was the story that they were telling me about your talk that you gave there. So it really stuck with me that it's such a great metaphor. And it's so true that in nature, we have a great example of what we need to do for our kids, which is to allow them to get blown around a little when they're small, more and more as they get older, and help them, be there for them, but not stop them from bending and going through those difficult, challenging circumstances. I absolutely love that metaphor.
And also, too, to see these wins, just think of a parent. If you began to think of these wins, right, which are struggles of life, if you began to look at those wins for your children as opportunities for them to become stronger. So that means if you have something happen in school that's not quite right, instead of interfering and making it right without the child knowing, but step back and say, you know what? I need to let this wind blow on my child, and I need to see how they're going to react at 7 and at 9 and at 10 and at 11. And I need to be there to affirm them in their decision, help them be confident that even if they get it wrong, that they'll get it right some other time or in the future, or by getting it wrong, they'll learn to get it right, and really see all of these things that we see as hazards for our children, that we begin to see them as, here, that's a great opportunity that's coming right there. And that kid just teased him. And instead of stepping in and telling the teacher and telling the principal and scolding the kid, let me just let my son or daughter deal with it and let me see how they do, because maybe this can be a learning experience. It's very hard to tape your mouth shut as a parent and let things happen like that.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Well, I'm all for that. And in fact, we even tell the kids and parents at camp that we want there to be some disagreements in the cabin groups, because that is how we all learn better communication, conflict resolution. If everybody got along perfectly all the time at camp, we wouldn't grow as much. So we do need some conflict and some wins to just build our interpersonal muscles. So I love that. So you have the book divided into, it looks like 3 parts. The first part is parents, check your attitude. The second part, you have some advice of what to do. And then the end part is what not to do. And I want to ask you about a couple of the chapters in the what not to do, just because I was drawn to those. One was in chapter 11, it's don't sentence your children to the family business. And this one was especially interesting for me because I, in fact, have a family business of my own. And in my industry of summer camps, there are a lot of independent camps. And a huge point of pride for many of the camps is that, they are being owned and operated by the 3rd or 4th generation in their family. And so I would love to, and I'm the first generation in my family, so it's not the case for me, but it's really interesting. You have some very compelling reasons why it sounds like you advise your clients not to encourage their children to go into the family business, and that's something that's a common practice. So what is your reason for this, or just a few of the high level reasons that you've come to this conclusion?
The reason that I generally believe that family businesses create conflicts is because, first of all, it starts a child on a path of a career choice and a passion that's not being found or directed by the child. So if you're a plumbing outfit, or if you're a car dealership, or if you're whatever your business does that makes widgets, it really becomes, trying to nurture the child into that directive, when I've seen the other side. So I don't just make this stuff up. This is where I've seen hundreds and hundreds of situations after the fact. And I've had children grow up in the family business and get to be 40 or 50 years old and say, I never got the opportunity to really explore what I wanted to do. I really, mom and dad thought it would be a good thing, and they did it with the best of intentions, but they got me to work at the hardware store that the family has owned, and they make good money there. And that's what I did. And the fallout, the negative of it is that mom and dad had an incredible pride about what they had built. And they thought that they could transfer that pride to me, that of course, someday I would sit there with the same amount of pride that they had in building it. But G2, Generation 2, usually does not have that sense of, I started from scratch and look what I created. And so they come into this thing that's somewhat forced upon them, because they really didn't know when they were young and started sweeping the floors at the company store that this was ultimately going to work into a package where they're going to get you through college, they're going to have a part-time job that's going to be paying real well, and on and on and on. And they thought that somewhere I would get the pride, but frankly, this isn't my business. And everybody reminds me that mom and dad built it and it's gotten big, but now, I didn't do it, and I don't feel the pride of ownership of it. And frankly, I wish I had something less that I had built on my own. And so that's the kind of thing that's probably primary. And secondary to that is it causes oftentimes, a lot of family disharmony, where you'll have the son will come into the business. I mean, I can think of 100 examples. The son comes into the business and dad brings him in. He works there real hard. He's making more money than he normally would because dad's proud of him and elevating him up the ladder. Daughter is not in the business, marries a husband that's hardworking. Husband of daughter says, what are we getting out of that? Seems like brother's getting all the good stuff. And so daughter begins to get upset at brother and dad and mom for her not getting her part. And so now mom and dad start to say, okay, we're going to give you part of the business when we die. And the brother that owns part of the business is saying, wait a minute, I've been in this business working 25 years and now my sister is going to own. Well, of course, she's our family. She's going to own, but she's going to be telling me what to do. And worse yet, that husband of hers who I don't like is going to be telling me what to do through her. And those conflicts multiply when you get into Generation 2 and particularly Generation 3, which almost needs a full-time counselor to keep from going down those roads of disharmony. And who needs it? Why not have families that have found their own niche? When you die, if you're going to give them money, give them the money, let them go find their own deal, unless you really do find someone in the family that after they kind of go out and explore the world, they come back in and say, I think I really like to, be in this business that you've created. I think it might be fun. And then you just have to figure about the next step of how are you going to make that fair to the family down the road, that you're fair with all of your children.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were talking, I was thinking a lot about there are some examples that have been done very well in the camp industry of people who did go and have other careers outside of the family business that, then they bring back and can kind of add to or improve upon, an already successful business. But I do agree that you kind of need your own thing. And it's funny because my oldest daughter has said those words to me that, you do too good of a job. It's already too good. I want to go do my own thing and make something else good.
Right.
And I love that because that's so true. That's what I wanted to do. And now, she wants to do the same thing. She wants to go make a mark somewhere, and she still loves what our family business, but it's not her thing right now anyway.
And I was going to say, and also too, that you're excited and you have the passions. You can never outrun someone who's being fueled by passion. Never. The person with passion can live it all day long. They can sleep it all night long. They can get up in the morning and do it, but they're so passionate because they built it and they own it. They go 100%. Well, when you do that kind of a job, it's oftentimes very difficult for a child to follow and not feel like they kind of have this unspoken criticism of never measuring up to what mom and dad did. And again, you put a hood over their head rather than taking the umbrella off and letting them feel the sun of their own discovery. And, what I was going to say to you is if I were doing that the right way, I would have the daughter go work for a competitor and say, here, go get a job over there and look around and spend 2 to 3 years working there and see if you like it without having the nepotism of everyone knowing that you have the right last name. And so everyone's going to treat you special. You need to go over there and learn the hard way. And then if you really like it, then let's talk. Let's sit down and talk.
Yeah, well, so you answered the question really well. I fully support that. And I think also there can be complementary things. Like I know an example of a guy who he went outside of his family camp business, ended up in public speaking and personal growth and was really doing some great things. And those skills he's brought back, 10 or 15 years later when he came back into the business. And I think you actually can enhance and you also have done your own thing. So you feel that pride and you know that you have some skills and kind of you're a marketable person without being part of the family business. And I think that's really important.
Well, and keep in mind too, that one of the things that you've learned being on your own, out on your own, is you've actually learned what your passions are. So now that fuel of your passion is brought back to your family business. And those areas of expertise that you have passion about become something that you're able to inject into the family business. But the fuel is nuclear. It's not just, I got to do what mom and dad did and keep it up the best I can. It's like, hey, I know now about how to scale this. I know now about internet advertising. I know how to do these things, or I really know this. And boy, you can't run with a person that adds that to the business.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's really exciting because I was kind of like, oh, bummer. I kind of would eventually, if one of my kids was interested in the business, I was like, oh, but I do think what you're saying is so true. If you have gone out, done your own thing, figured out what it is that really makes you tick, gives you fire to work. And if it does end up eventually being compatible, it can work out. I also know of some families who've transitioned well by having, if there is, depending on the size of the business, if it works, but if there's one child of the second generation who wants to run the business and the other two do not, that person can buy out the other siblings, and kind of take on, and that's a really clean way to do it where they're not kind of feeling like they're working for their siblings, or something even, or that kind of thing. So I thought that was good. Hi, Sunshine Parenting listeners. I want to take a moment to tell you about my new book, Happy Campers, 9 Summer Camp Secrets for Raising Kids Who Become Thriving Adults. The most recent review of Happy Campers on Amazon is from Kristen. She says, when I started reading this book, I shouted to my husband, oh my gosh, she's me. Monkey cites every single development author I cherish in a new context, one I can apply to my parenting and children's programs at my rock climbing gym. There are some classic child-rearing tomes, and there's books that are filler, and this is neither of these. It's a new entry into a field that's sorely needed. Evidence-based, clinically tested, and heart-driven advice. and accounts that can make a huge difference for parents and children. Get it now. You will not be disappointed. For more information about Happy Campers and information about where you can purchase a copy and also how you can join my read-along for the 2019-2020 school year, visit happycampersbook.com. The other thing that you talk about a lot is, and I found really interesting, was the estate planning and your kind of takeaways about that. And in one part, you talk about how, is this a different generation where people feel more comfortable kind of asking and talking about money? So why don't you talk a little bit about your thoughts about the whole estate planning, which I'm sure you're very involved in with your clients?
Yes. And I would say there's two parts of this. The first part that is controversial at times is I believe that it's not good to bring your kids in at early stages to your wealth, to your estate planning. Gee, dear mom and dad have got you ready to inherit 1/3 of X amount of dollars, and we own this and this and this and this. Because the truth is again, it's part of giving too much. It's part of ensuring their future, and it takes away the opportunity for them to go out and to have the incentive to go forward and do their own thing. When they know there's a safety net, they tend not to grapple with their own future quite as seriously. So that's one part. I don't believe in talking. A lot of psychologists will say, oh yeah, let's get together with all the kids at 25 and 30 and let's kumbaya around the campfire and let's tell them everything mom and dads have got. When I hear that, usually later on when the kids are 50 and mom and dad are 75, I start to hear them talk about, well, mom and dad are not acting quite as rationally as they used to be. We really need to start taking some of this away, because if they didn't have anything, then, there'd be nothing to worry about. But they have a lot and it's ours, and we need to make sure. So we're going to take away their rights to handle this. We're going to put in trustees and buffers. And I see all that kind of stuff where the under generation usurps the older generation, and that causes a war. That just literally causes a war in the family. So that's part of it. The second part is just the issue of, what exactly do you plan on giving your kids? What is the plan and how much are you going to give your kids? And part of, the question that always comes to me is, how much is too much to give our kids? And I say it's wrong question. The right question is, how little is too little? So I tell my clients, by giving them nothing. So let's just start and say, and I know that's not going to happen, but let's just talk about nothing. What if you gave them nothing? What do you think the deficit would be to my kids? And there's two different answers. One, my kids will be fine. They're all productive. They're all working hard at their jobs. They're going to be fine. And the other one is, well, if I left them nothing, oh my gosh, what if something happened? I need to be there to catch them, to make sure that, they've got this safety net all the time. And I always tell people that, generally speaking, people that start with that premise and work backwards, where you start to say, hey, what exactly is your effort? Are you trying to take out all the strain of life from your kids from now on? Do you think that handing them $1 million is going to make life just all of a sudden happy or easier? And then I can show them the examples of where, not just wealthy clients like my clients that leave, sometimes tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. The majority of the type of money, I'd say $1 million on up, is that oftentimes it causes incredible fracture between siblings, between husbands and wives. You get the wife that inherits the $1 million, and the wife says to the husband, this is my money. Just so you know, we're working hard as a couple. We've always been community property, all that stuff, but this is my money. And so the wife says, I've really been thinking about buying a new little vacation home and this and that. And the husband says, well, we'd like to have it here versus there. And all of a sudden the wife is saying, I get that, but it's my money. We don't have the money between us to do it. So what I want to do is what's going to happen. And if I want to buy something like a Porsche, I'm going to buy that. But if family needs to buy it, it's going to be, well, we don't need it. And I watch this, and I've had people from all over the world email me about that exact problem. Wow. I just never realized that when we did this, we actually created in the marriage of the kids a potential problem. So All I'm saying to my clients and to everybody is I would rather see you secure their future than to spoil their future. And securing might mean give them money so that if they have hospital problems and medical problems and children that have got deficits, education that you want to pay for your grandkids, all of those things are really great ways to secure their future. And you can do that with simple trusts. But when you're just dumping money on kids at your death, particularly if it happens when they're young, if you happen to pass away when you're 60 and your kids are 30, I would say the chances of literally causing harm to your kids with $1 million is higher than 50%, where kids really derail. I watch marriages break up because now son's got money and now he's ready to spin the wife. And as you get into higher and higher dollars, I can tell you the hazard just increases where the lifestyle changes. So that would be my overview, is that you just need to make sure that however you give them the money, you don't change their current lifestyle. You don't want them to start buying material things. You want to just ensure the well-being of their future.
Gosh, that sounds really good. And I like that whole thing that if they don't need anything, you've done a good job. So like if your kids are in their 60s, for example, when you pass away and they don't need anything from you, that's well done, grandparents or whatever. And gosh, really good point. And if they do need it, then that's not good for them to have it then, because they needed to figure out how to make their own living for themselves.
And that's a good, fun question to ask. And I do this when I'm lecturing and everywhere. I say, try and experiment. Go to your kids when they're 30 or whatever, 20, 30, 40, and say, mom and dad we've had a great life. We've done these fun little things. You've done the best we could. We decided that we want to give you kids a gift. And the gift is this. We're going to create a little family foundation in our name. And when we die, we're going to use all the money we need to live. But when we die, we're going to put all the money in that foundation and we're going to name you kids the directors. So you three get to give away to just causes and charities, whatever you want. It's going to be up to you. You three kids or you two kids are going to give our money away. And then sit back and keep your mouth shut, because you'll hear one of two reactions. Some of the kids will go, gosh, mom, dad, that's great. That's a really beautiful idea. And thank you. And the other ones will look at you like, you're absolutely out of your mind. You're going to give our money away. Now, you just put a litmus test out. And the ones that say, hey, mom and dad, that's a great idea, probably more able to take the money.
Right.
The ones that say, mom and dad, you're out of your mind. That's our doggone money. How dare you give away our money? You better think really hard about how you're going to do this.
Wow. So true. I love that litmus test. Now a whole bunch of people will have it to try with their kids. I think most of my listeners, they have younger kids. And I think it comes at the ages with younger kids or adolescents or young adults. It's more about the things that people buy. And you gave an example, I thought very applicable example about cars and how did that impact, a child who gets a brand new, fairly fancy car when they're a teenager? What does that send them? And to me, I was always, that wasn't how I was raised. And I always think, gosh, there's a lot of joy in working towards something. And you've taken that opportunity away from your kid if they don't get to drive a somewhat junky car as their first car. It needs to be like a hand-me-down, not, I don't know. So it's just funny, but that's been my mindset, is that I don't want my kids to be in their first car that they're driving. First of all, they're not very good drivers and they get dings and stuff in it. And so, I just think that's one of those things that I think parents think they're doing something really nice. But like you say in your book, it actually takes something away from the child, which is they don't have that idea then once they start working. Wow, if I work really hard and save my money and make these choices, maybe someday I can buy this dream car that I have in mind. If it's just handed to you, you've kind of like squashed the dream.
Well, and also too, if you take the pride issue we talked about earlier with the business, it's the same thing with a car, is that most of the parents that buy their kids new cars, they didn't get new cars.
No, you're right.
They basically went through the broken car, the rusty car, the broken down engine, the having to wait until they could put new tires because they didn't have enough money to put on new tires, and that struggle. And they get to a point where they finally say, I don't want my kid to go through that. I want that same pride. And boy, I'll tell you, the most pride I ever had was when I got my first new car, even though it was only a Toyota Corolla, it was my first car that had a warranty. I'm going to start there with my kid, and I'm going to expect that daughter or son at 16 years old is going to have that same amount of pride. I'm sure they are. I can just feel it's going to be that way. And then when they come home and the whole thing is full of cookies and crumbs and stinky soccer stuff and bathing suits and fins and everything that's gone on in that car with no clean, and it's not being cared for, the wheels are all dirty, the parent comes up and says, where the heck is your pride? When I was a kid, I would have never left. And here you go. You've kind of exposed yourself for exactly what you did. You basically figured that you could transfer the pride to your kids, and they can't. And what you take away, one of the great stories that I love to look back on, I met my wife when she was very, very young, and I was there when she got her first car, and she was 16, and it was a horrible car called a Chevy Vega, which I don't think there is ever a Vega that made it across the country without breaking down. And when she was 16, she was in a remote area of California and on her way back from work, and the car's engine fell out of the bottom of the car. The engine did. And, you know, that everything you give your child, you take something away. Well, what did she get from that? There were no cell phones. She had to flag someone down. It scared her. It was at night. She basically wound up getting a ride to a gas station, leaving the car on the side. She didn't know what to do, but she started by calling her father. And her father got a tow truck, and she had to meet the tow truck, and then she had to go with the tow truck driver. Her father met her there, and then she had to fix the engine. And there was an issue about who should be responsible because this used car was just bought a few months ago. And she learned about that. And over time, she learned so much from that piece of garbage Vega that, you know, this is something that I know how to deal with lots of this stuff. And so when it came to her first car, which actually was a Toyota Corolla, you know, it was a long, long time ago, but she was just so appreciative of having a car that she didn't worry about breaking down. But she forgot, you know, we forget as a parent that in giving our kids everything we didn't have, we forget to give them what we did have. And that is all the stuff that came along with that, getting that first new car, which was all that garbage of that broken down Vega. It taught my wife so much, and she knows so much about cars and things and stuff as a result of that.
Well, that is just a great story, as are all the stories in your book. So our time is up, but I would love, Richard, for you to share with listeners where they can find you. I know you do a lot of speaking, what topics you speak on. So where do you want people to find you and follow up if they want some more information about your work?
Well, thank you for that. You can reach me in Entitlemania. The title of the book, Entitlemania.com, is got all the information of all the things that we do. And you can find me at Rich Watts on Twitter, and also Richard Watts Author in Facebook. Those are the places you can kind of get information on everything that we do.
Okay, well, great. Thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed your book, and it was very thought-provoking, I will tell you, as a parent with kids currently 15 to 25, just planning ahead here. It's really helpful to just kind of put this information in my hopper as just a reminder that I want my kids to have the same challenges that I got to have and gained so much from.
Audrey, it's been a pleasure. You can call back anytime.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the podcast. As always, you can find notes, links, and additional resources in the show notes for this episode. You can find those notes by visiting sunshine-parenting.com and search for episode 101. If you're a regular listener of the podcast, I'd really appreciate you taking a moment to give Sunshine Parenting a rating and review in iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. I also really love getting individual feedback via email from listeners. You can reach me at audrey@sunshine-parenting.com. I'll end this episode with some of Richard's words from Entitlemania. This is from page 59. With the best of intentions, we often get in the way of the story our children want to write. Parenting is something very special, and if performed correctly, it's an arduous discipline that involves learning to maintain a love and vision while recognizing that reaching the summit is not as important as the climb. Parents shouldn't care what mountain their child is ascending, just that they learn to climb, fall, recover, and climb again. Consider how presumptuous it is for parents to select the mountain for their child to climb and then badger them constantly to climb the mountain their way.
This podcast is a proud member of Parents on Demand. a network of high-quality shows for families just like yours. Download our free network app on Apple and Android and listen to your favorite episodes on the go.